how to adjust the valve clearance on a 420 BU burnisher. If it's equipped with a muffler guard, that will need to be removed. This can be done by using a 1/2-inch open-end wrench. Loosen the mounting bolts located on either side of the spindle assembly. And then simply grasp the muffler guard and remove it, set it aside. This adjustment has to be made while the engine is cool or at room temperature. Never make these adjustments while the engine is hot. First thing you would like to do is, after you have the machine in the rock back position, it's a good idea to rotate the unit so that the head assembly is sitting level or parallel to the floor. What this does, it drains a pocket of oil that's located in the bottom corner of this valve cover, so you don't have oil that spills all over the engine. To do this, just simply grasp the deck firmly, rotate the unit until the valve cover is parallel with the floor. This allows the oil to drain from that pocket. After a few seconds, resume the rock back position and carefully remove the valve cover. Even though you drain the oil out of the small pocket, it's still a good idea to use a shop rag or a towel to keep excess oil from spilling. Before you try to remove the valve cover, if it seems stuck, take the handle of a screwdriver, tap on the side to help break it loose. Then simply remove the valve cover. Sometimes the gasket will stick, sometimes it won't. Generally, if you'll tap on the cover very lightly, the gasket will remain in place and will not have to be changed. You'll notice the small pocket of oil I was describing earlier. If we did not rock the machine over to drain that pocket of oil, there would have been twice as much oil down the side of the engine. Next, we need to remove the spark plug boot and spark plug. This is done with a 13/16 spark plug socket. Next step, we need to find what stroke of the engine that we're on. We have to make the valve clearance adjustments at top dead center on the compression stroke. No other place will the engine be allowed to, you will be allowed to make these adjustments and they be correct. Remember, it has to be at top dead center on the compression stroke. A simple way to find the location of the piston in the cylinder bore is just to use a screwdriver, an ink pen, or anything else that will easily fit through the spark plug hole. Once the spark plug is removed, just lightly set the tool of choice into position. Simply grasp the pad holder assembly and rotate it clockwise from the operator position, since this is the manner in which the engine operates. As you rotate the pad holder, you'll notice this is the exhaust valve. The exhaust valve is located on the bottom. The intake valve is located on top. We want top dead center on the compression stroke. Since this is a 4-stroke engine, you have an intake, a compression, a power, and exhaust stroke. That makes up the 4 strokes of the engine. Since this exhaust valve is opening, as it is opening, I know that the piston is on its upward travel in the cylinder. This is the exhaust stroke. As the piston comes top dead center on the exhaust stroke, you'll notice as the piston goes back down in the bore, the intake valve is going to open. This is your intake stroke. During this stroke, as the piston goes down the bore of the engine, you're pulling fresh air fuel mixture into the combustion chamber. Whenever the piston reaches the bottom of its travel in the cylinder, the intake valve is going to close. It just closed. Now, this is the compression stroke, the upward travel of the piston after the intake valve has opened and closed. Continue to rotate the pad holder until you're at the top of the stroke. If you go back, you can actually have like a hump that is the top dead center of the compression stroke. At this point, you can stop and make your adjustments to your valve. To check the valve clearance, you'll need a feeler gauge. You need a 6/1000 gap between the rocker arm and the top of your valve stem. To check this gap, apply minimal pressure on the push rod area of the rocker arm, making sure that the valve rocker is not binding in any way. With slight pressure, you want to slide the feeler gauge in between just so you have just moderate tension on the feeler gauge. If the tension is not correct, or you cannot get the feeler gauge in, such as this would be too tight. Since a 6/1000 feeler gauge won't even go in, we know that the valve clearance is too tight. To make the adjustment, use 10mm inches, two 10mm inches. You'll notice a bolt and a nut. By turning the bolt after the nut is loose, the eccentric cylinder located in the center of your rocker arm actually raises and lowers your adjustment. We're going to loosen the nut. You'll notice if I rotate the bolt, you have index marks as well. But you'll notice the valve clearance open and closing. Take your feeler gauge, your 6/1000 feeler gauge, place it in. You see it travels very easily. Rotate the bolt until you feel a slight resistance. Hold the 10mm bolt in place, making sure that it does not move, and snug the lock nut in place so that you still have the same moderate tension. To check the clearance, I use a 3-gauge method. I have a 5, a 6, and a 7/1000 feeler gauge. I want the 5s to pass through easily without any resistance. The 6 should have slight pressure, slight resistance on the 6. The 7 should not even want to go in at all.